Ke'Bryan Hayes is on the IL, and folks, is it worse than we thought?
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every single day. My name is Ethan Smith. You can find me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make sure you go to FanDuel.com right now and use code LOCKEDONMLB and go bet on baseball as the season is winding down. Make sure you also go bet on your preseason football, and college football starts this weekend. So make sure you do all that over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So the Pirates lost 4-3 yesterday. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about Game 2 preview, other thoughts on everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. But the biggest, I think, that we need to start with and headline with today's show is, of course, Ke'Bryan Hayes. Ke'Bryan Hayes has had a very interesting season, to say the least. Had the very strong ending to 2023. And it really felt like he was kind of turning a corner. You know, he had the back injury last year that was very highly covered. And Jared Triolo comes up, has a pretty good 2023. And a lot of people said, okay, well, this might work out. Then Hayes comes back and everything seems fine. He tears the cover off the ball. It looks like he's going to do phenomenal things. And it just didn't work out for him. And now you go into 2024 with a sense of optimism for Ke'Bryan Hayes. He wins the Gold Glove Award. He gets it going as far as all of that's concerned. He unseats Nolan Arenado for that award. And it kind of felt like, okay, he got recognized for his efforts at the plate as well as defensively. 2024, we haven't seen that. And it's been unfortunate because Ke'Bryan Hayes is one of the guys that was viewed as a pillar of this Pirates baseball team and obviously was paid so back in 2022 whenever they signed him to the extension. And ever since, a lot of people have had questions about that extension and what it really means, what that extension is going to do for the future of this Pirates team and what he's going to do for the future of this Pirates team. But right now, it's not looking great for a guy like Ke'Bryan Hayes. 365 at-bats this year, a 233 average, only 4 home runs, 25 RBIs, 11 stolen bases, and a 573 OPS. As you can guess, a lot of those are career lows. A lot of them are not good numbers whatsoever for him. And before this IL stint, in his last 30 games, he was batting .235 with a .270 slugging. In his last 7 games, a .71 average with a 179 slugging. So you just haven't really seen the Ke'Bryan Hayes that we've seen before, I think would be the good notion to bring here. And when you also consider that he only has 13 extra base hits this year, you can sense that there's something wrong, especially offensively. And I would say as well, we know that Ke'Bryan Hayes and the bat are what are going to be his calling card. And when you say that, you're like, okay, well, the defense is always going to be there. The defense should always be there with Ke'Bryan Hayes, and even that's taken a step back this year. So you start to wonder how much this back injury is actually affecting a guy like Ke'Bryan Hayes. How much is this actually bothering him? How much is this actually affecting what he's able to do? And Jason Mackey had a phenomenal piece yesterday on all of this just before he went to the IL. And one of the more interesting ones that I took away from this as far as quotes were concerned was the quote that he was discussing about MRIs and how everything was going for him and what was going on. And he said the whole issue is the disc has lost its jelly stuff. He said, when we look at MRIs, the discs are just kind of compressing. I don't know that it's rubbing, but it's definitely a little collapsed to where there's pressure, inflammation builds up, and muscles want to try to protect. So for those that might not know, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to sit here and give you a history lesson of herniated discs and what discs do for your back. But I think Jason Mackey did a very good job at kind of explaining it so people can understand it. And Mackey says, when it comes to the discs in your back, there's an analogy often drawn to a jelly donut. Discs are between bones in your spine where they function like shock absorbers. With herniated discs, the jelly stuff or disc fluid breaks through the outside, placing added pressure on the nerves in your spine. So that's definitely something to monitor, for the sole fact that you look at that and you say, okay, it's a problem. Like, it's a massive problem for Ke'Bryan Hayes now that this disc is not really doing a lot for him. And this has been a problem for Ke'Bryan Hayes now since the 2022 season. We remember back when he first debuted and hit the opening day home run against Chicago, that was a wrist issue. That didn't really have much to do with his back. But then now, since 2022, it's just kind of been a constant flow and ebb and flow of things that's making this all not work out. And I think that it's worrisome for the fact that this is a guy that you've already paid, and this is a guy that you're expecting to be the anchor at third base alongside a shortstop in O'Neal Cruz, who hasn't been all that great defensively this year either. So you can't really have a guy who's basically playing on a bad back, expect him to have the same kind of production. And when you do all this and you say all this, it's hard to say because, again, we're not the medical professionals. I'm a sports guy. I don't know all of the medical stuff with it. But even Jared Triolo in this piece with Jason Mackey chipped in and said, anytime you have a teammate who's playing through something, you gain a lot of respect for them. Just being a ball player and giving whatever percent you have to your team is desirable in a teammate for sure. But from a team standpoint, this is something I think that was highly overdue. Very highly overdue. Because you could see it all year, that it's been something that's been bothering Ke'Bryan Hayes. It's been something that he's dealt with, not even just this year. He's dealt with this all throughout his career at this point. And if you know something's wrong and he's not playing well, mind you, I could see if he was hitting the ball well and he was putting it at all parts of the field and stuff like that, but he's not. So why would we continue to play him instead of letting him maybe get a little bit healthier? Because it doesn't ever feel like Ke'Bryan Hayes is going to be 100%. I think we can admit that to ourselves. I don't think he's ever going to be this guy that's always going to be completely healthy going into a season. I think moving forward, and you see over here how it says, how does this impact his future? I think moving forward, you're looking at a guy in Ke'Bryan Hayes who's going to need that week off or only going to play 4 games a week. And when you're paying a guy like you're paying Hayes, albeit I still think it's one of the better contracts in baseball for the glove when he's able to be sound defensively over there. But when you're paying a guy like this, you want him to be able to play 6 or 7 games a week. You want him to be available to you in the lineup every single day. But on that same coin, if he's not producing, there's no need to keep him there. So this affects the team and Hayes in a very unique way, I think, because you've kind of put all your chips in with Ke'Bryan Hayes being your third baseman of the future. We've seen that. He was a riser through the system, came up, absolutely tore the cover off the ball in the COVID year, comes up in 2021, has the wrist injury on the second day of the season, misses a large part of that year. Then he comes back and does well. Last year, he does okay to start the season, but then after the injury in 2023, comes back in that second half and has a phenomenal second half. And that's why I spoke about the optimism. But we haven't seen it this year. We just haven't. Ke'Bryan Hayes has just flat out not been a good baseball player this year. And I don't think it's entirely all his fault because he's hurt. I mean, you can visibly see that Ke'Bryan Hayes has been injured for the large part of this season. You can visibly see it with the way he plays defensively and moves left to right, with the way that he's hitting right now. He's not taking anything opposite field whatsoever. And it's unfortunate because now for the team, it has to be in their minds that you're thinking about a backup plan for third base already. And you're only 3 years into this 8-year deal. And that's not good. Because now, yeah, you have Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, but I like his glove more elsewhere. Then you have O'Neal Cruz. He can't play third. Jared Triolo defensively can play third, but kind of the same issues that you have in Ke'Bryan Hayes where the bat just really isn't there. Nick Gonzalez could also play third. I don't like his arm over there. So now you're having to start to ask yourself all of these questions about what you do with one of the premier positions in all of baseball. And that's unfortunate because this is a team that has aspirations. This is a team 2.5 weeks ago that really thought they were a playoff team. But if you have those aspirations, you cannot be getting next to nothing offensively from the third base position. And that's what Hayes has been doing. So is the back worse than we thought? It really might be. And that's really unfortunate for a guy like Ke'Bryan Hayes because he is a phenomenal baseball player. He is as talented as anybody on that field. But you can't ask a guy to play on a bad back, and it might be a bad back for the remainder of his career and maybe even the rest of his life. And that's tough. That is a tough cookie to swallow in terms of Ke'Bryan Hayes. And even Derek Shelton in this piece said that we've seen him, when we've seen him really good, we see him on time and able to drive balls. The inconsistency with timing has been the biggest thing. Having a bad back in a sport that's all about timing is going to mess with your timing. And that's exactly what's happening right now. And you look at his value, you can't trade the guy. Nobody's going to take that. And then you look at his health, it's not all that good either. So you really don't know. I mean, it's a really up in the air kind of fluid situation, but it's something to monitor even going into next season as well. And hopefully Ke'Bryan Hayes can find a way to navigate it throughout his career. And if he does, great. Let's hope that he comes back and he's a phenomenal player. I also think we might have saw the last of him of 2024 this year. And it's really unfortunate. It is. So the team is going to have to ask themselves some questions. Hayes is going to have to ask himself some questions. And it's a situation that they're just going to have to monitor for a very, very, very long time. We're going to discuss the Pirates' loss to the Texas Rangers in Game 1 of their series at Globe Life Park with a little bit of takeaways from what I saw on Monday night's action right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 because Prize Picks, it's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million members. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. And one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on your pool on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. So don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Green Day said that once. And you look at Prize Picks right now. If you think Brian Reynolds can go yard at Globe Life Park, you can bet that on Prize Picks and win a bunch of money. But download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Oh, Prize Picks, run your game. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. After making this your first listen, please make Locked On MLB your second listen of the day with Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call him Sully. He's going to be bringing you all of your MLB insights and analysis as October approaches, so make sure you go check that out. over on the Locked On Podcast Network. Also, make sure you check out Chris Carter at Locked On Steelers. The Steelers season is quickly approaching. Also, check out Locked On Pitt, Locked On Penn State, and Locked On Penguins to get your full fix of everything in Western Pennsylvania. Pirates lost 4-3 yesterday to the Texas Rangers. Had a big fourth inning. Jared Triolo, who we mentioned a little bit earlier, starting to heat up a little bit. I think he'll be the guy that you see at third quite a bit moving forward. I think it's also a good thing for a guy like Jared Triolo to be getting these opportunities, much like you're seeing with G1 Bay, because these are guys you got to find answers on in G1 Bay and Jared Triolo and some of these other fringe guys, because you got all this other stuff going on with Nick Gonzalez. You're going to have Andy Rodriguez coming back next year. You don't know what they're going to add throughout the offseason. So they got to start making decisions on some of these guys. And Jared Triolo is especially one of them. So I think you're going to see Jared Triolo a lot at third base. This was an interesting game between the Rangers and the Pirates, though. The Rangers obviously get out to a hot start. Corey Seager just had a phenomenal day. He scored all 4 runs in this one for the Rangers. 2 hits and 3 at-bats with a walk, had the lead or the home run in the first inning. And Luis Ortiz, more on the Pirates side, he's found a knack to kind of have starts lately where he just blows up in the first or second inning very early in these games, and then he just settles in. And that's kind of what happened in this game last night. I mean, he gave up all 4 runs that were allowed in the first 3 innings, but he still managed to go 6 innings in this one with 4 earned runs, only 5 hits allowed, and 7 strikeouts. So Luis Ortiz, who's been somewhat of a surprise this year in some form or fashion, has been he's been good. As a back-end rotation guy, I think you're okay with what you've been getting from Luis Ortiz. He still has a 3.56 ERA in 101 innings pitched, 78 strikeouts, a 1.14 whip. The velocity has been back. The movement on his pitches has been back outside of the first couple innings where he was leaving balls right down the middle for Corey Seager. You never want to do that. But also, I think you're finally starting to see this bullpen settle back into itself a little bit. We saw Dennis Santana and Jalen Beeks yesterday, and they had 4 strikeouts across 2 innings, no earned runs, no hits allowed. And if you've noticed, ever since they got out of the stretch against San Diego, Arizona, and LA, which virtually ended their playoff hopes because of a large part of the bullpen, they've now kind of settled back in. And I said that this bullpen was going to settle back into itself, And that's a big thing for this team. But you look at the offense yesterday, and it was kind of just a weird day. IKF was 0 for 5 in the leadoff spot. Reynolds was 1 for 4. Cruz 0 for 3. Joey Bart had another big day, 2 for 4. But Billy McKinney, who they bring up after really he's had a strong AAA season. Sorry to the Indianapolis Indians for still thinking it was Billy Cook on that one video. I got flamed very hard by the Indianapolis Indians admin, so I'm sorry about that. But Billy McKinney comes up yesterday, has a 2 for 4 day, and I wouldn't really read too much into this with Billy McKinney being up here. 29 years old, left-handed outfielder, 676 career regular season guy, and 822 at-bats. Maybe he catches a little bit of fire, but I think this is just a recognition of the fact that he's had a very strong AAA season. I think that you kind of want to wait a little bit longer to bring up guys like Nick York and Billy Cook and maybe even a Matt Gorski. But I wouldn't read into it too much. If he comes up and helps, he helped yesterday, obviously scored after the Triolo 3-run home run, then I think you're okay with it. And that's kind of what you have to look at. I wouldn't read too much into it. I don't think Billy McKinney is a future piece of this team, but he's here anyway. Right now, with this team, and I've discussed it a little bit as well, we'll talk about this a little bit in the preview of Game 2, they're playing solid baseball still. They had the Mariners loss on Sunday where they got blown out. It happens. But even throughout this long stretch of losing games, there's only been not even a handful of games where they've gotten completely outmatched. And this was not a game where they got completely outmatched. And this isn't a Rangers team that should completely outmatch the Pittsburgh Pirates either, because they just not had a great season. They're 58-68 now. Their pitching has been a little weird. Their injuries have been even more prominent. I think that's even more of an issue for the Texas Rangers. But for the Pirates at this point, folks, I think you just want them to win series, and they still have an opportunity to do that tonight against the Texas Rangers, where it will be Mitch Keller versus Bradford. So we're going to preview Game 2. I'm going to give some other quick thoughts on other things going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com right now because you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So all you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up. And don't forget, you can bet on the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight against the Texas Rangers. They are an underdog, so if you want to get some plus money, go for it on FanDuel. College football starts this weekend between Florida State and Georgia Tech and Ireland. If you think Georgia Tech can pull off the upset, go bet it on FanDuel.com right now. And head to FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. And it's an official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. What more could you ask for? And welcome back to the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates, everybody here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. It is the 58-66 Pirates against the 58-68 Texas Rangers in Game 2 at Globe Life Park. The first time that the Pittsburgh Pirates are visiting Globe Life Park. And as I mentioned, it will be Mitch Keller on the mound tonight for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Mitch Keller kind of taking a little bit of a dip lately from what we've seen from earlier in the year. 10-7 record now in 24 starts, a 3.95 ERA, 141 innings pitched, 125 strikeouts. But over his last 7 starts, he has a 5.21 ERA in 38 innings, 22 earned runs, 13 walks, 29 strikeouts. You go back to the last 15, he's done a lot better at 3.96. And his last 2 starts, he's allowed 15 earned runs in 9 innings. So you're hoping for a strong bounce back start from Mitch Keller tonight. Obviously, one of the pillars of this rotation will continue to be one of the pillars of this rotation moving forward. And I think you're hoping that you just, near the end of the year here, I think that you're just hoping that you get the Mitch Keller that you had earlier in the year. Now, he had the bad start early on, but then obviously after that first start against Miami, he really started to turn it on. A lot of people were even questioning why he wasn't an all-star this season. But you start to see some of the issues that he's run into. Obviously, the walks. He's had 6 walks in his last 3 starts. Not terrible when you consider that it's in 13 innings, but still, that's about a walk an inning almost, so you don't want to do that. The strikeout numbers have also been down as well over the last 3 starts. He only had 2 against San Diego, 5 against the Dodgers, and 4 against Arizona. So you would like that number to come back up as well. I mean, 11 strikeouts in 13 innings. We've seen Mitch Keller be dominant on the mound, and this is a Rangers offense that has a ton of firepower. It's a Rangers offense that is going to test Mitch Keller for sure. But you would like to see him have that kind of bounce back start that we've been waiting on from Keller. We've seen the starting pitching staff kind of take not a nosedive, but we've seen them definitely take a step back from what we saw throughout most of the season. Part of that was Jared Jones being out, who was also struggling before his IL stint. Now Mitch Keller, he's kind of seen cracks open a little bit with Paul Skeens, but we'll see how all that rolls out as far as that pitching is concerned. The Rangers will be starting a lefty tonight, and it will be his 8th start as Cody Bradford, the 26-year-old lefty, will be going for the Texas Rangers. 3.50 ERA, has 0 losses so far, so it'd be really nice if the Pirates give him his first loss of the year. 33 strikeouts in 36 innings. This is a pitch-to-contact lefty. He's not going to overpower you all that much. A 1.0 whip. Career guy, 4.60 ERA, again, 84 strikeouts in 92 innings, not an overly powerful left-hander. And we've seen the Pirates have a lot of success against left-handers this season. We've seen them have some of their best offensive games against left-handed pitching. So this is a game where I think you would like to see them get after Cody Bradford. And Bradford has not allowed more than 3 earned runs in his last 3 starts. I also believe that might go further. I'll check as well. Yeah, he had 5 earned runs in July 30th. So in 3 of his last 4 starts, he's allowed 3 earned runs or less. And in 14 2/3 innings so far in August, I mean, you're looking at a guy whose opposing average right now is only 217. And that's what you like to see right now out of this kind of guy. And his ERA in August, a 3.68. The Rangers will take that because they've dealt with pitching issues all season. And I'm interested with this game too, because the Pirates yesterday did not use all of their bullpen really. Ortiz gave them 6 innings. Santana gave them an inning and a third. Beeks gave them 2 third innings. So you're looking at having a fresh bullpen for the most part. Hunter Stratton is back. Ben Heller could be used. You look at a guy, and even Dennis Santana, who could maybe even throw if he wanted to. Hunter Stratton, Kyle Nicholas, Bednar, Herman. You look at Chapman also. And it's something to, it's something to monitor with this game. I would love the Pirates to win this game and force a rubber match. I think it would be massive for them, especially with a 7-game homestand coming up against 7 games against NL Central opponents in the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Cubs. So kind of a way that you can erase some of this stink that you've had, because you're still only 2.5 back of those teams. And you're only 3 games back of the Cardinals. And I think that it would say a lot for this team if they can go into that stretch of games against Cincinnati and Chicago and really have some success and find a way to formulate I'd say 5-2 or even 4-3 record in those games. Just an over 500 record in those games, I think, would mean a lot to this team. You still obviously play St. Louis again. I believe they still play Cincinnati again also throughout the rest of the season. And I've spoken about this already, that I want this team to get over 500. I want them to have a winning record. You heard me and Gary talk about this yesterday, that it's a benchmark for this team. You want to see them kind of knock that one out of the way. You want to see them get that one out of the way and kind of take care of business and go into 2025 saying, well, we've already had a winning campaign. Now all we have to do is improve by a series or improve by 4 or 5 games to get to the ultimate goal, which is the postseason, which is something in 2025 I think they can definitely do. Obviously, we'll be talking about that a lot more once the season ends and we start doing season recaps and grades and a bunch of other stuff like that. But folks, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast, as you always do here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Find this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms because it is free for you every single day. And until tomorrow, folks, see you on the flip side.